Hey y'all, welcome back to the channel. Can we talk with Monique? I am Monique. Thank you so much for joining me. Please remember, give me a thumbs up, and like and subscribe this video, as well as ringing that little bell. That way you'll be notified of any of my upcoming uploads. And also by ringing the bell and giving me a thumbs up, it lets YouTube know that you're interested in what I have to say. First and foremost, I want to say thank you to all my new subscribers. I am so humble and I am so appreciative of all the new subscribers. And I hope that the information that I'm providing, it helps you. I'm still a work in progress, guys, healing on my journey, just like you guys are. Many of you may have just come out of relationships with narcissists or are still in relationships. But guys, there are people on this platform who really do want to help and have been through the same thing as you have. So don't feel like you're alone, because there are many other people, unfortunately, going through the same thing. So this particular upload and podcast is the soul tie and the trauma bond, right? So I know a lot of us talk or have heard, we start learning this vernacular as it relates to narcissism, and we learn about the trauma bond, but then we hear something about a soul tie. And I know a lot of times they be like, oh my God, that's my soulmate. You know, I met this person, they're my soulmate, you know, the person you're supposed to be with. But this was something I had to kind of research in more depth, and I wanted to understand it better, because it was something that all of us who have been in relationships with these entities called narcissists, we were either soul tied, trauma bonded, usually both of them, right? But the words soul tie and trauma bond, they seem very similar in nature. So I wanted to just spend some time talking about the trauma bond and, the narcissist. And this is one of the reasons why we stay in a situationships with them, because it's not a relationship, guys. Remember, it's all transactional. It's a situationship, right? And when we learn that and we accept it, it's so much better to us, even though it may be hard to accept that it's really not a true relationship. It's a situationship. It helps us to be able to heal. But let's talk about these soul ties and trauma bonds. So I was like, ooh, that's something that's real deep. What's going on with the trauma bond? And I started realizing, once we realized that being in relationships with these individuals, it is truly abuse, then we can get into the trauma bond. So let me just read this article here. And this is Psychology Today, I think it is. So if you look at your screen, Psych Central. So guys, this is a good resource to go to. And this is called Recovering from a I don't want y'all all in my business, but anyway, it's called Recovering from a Narcissist. And it goes on to say, narcissists use trauma bonding and intermittent reinforcement to get you addicted to them. And this is why abuse survivors stay. So let's talk about it. So definitely the trauma bond, when we're in a relationship with a narcissist, it's abuse. And one of the tactics they use is this trauma bond. And so what they do is, when you scroll down, they use this intermittent reinforcement, a pattern of the nice, nasty, sweet, kind type of thing. And, intermittent reinforcement, where they're really nice to you, then they're mean, and that tends to get you trauma bonded. And the role of the intermittent reinforcement in trauma bonding is a pattern, and it's a pattern such as rewards, such as affection, a compliment, gifts, maybe some sporadic unpredictability throughout the abuse cycle. Just think, a lot of times we've gotten into arguments, or maybe it's been violent in your relationship, and then they come back and praise you or give you a gift or give you a compliment and say they love you and give them flowers right after they assaulted you. So it puts you in this situation, well, this person just did that to me, but they still care about me. So that intermittent reinforcement causes the victim to perpetually seek that approval again, right? And so it's manipulation, guys, right? It's a manipulation tactic. It's one of their largest ones besides gaslighting. It's a manipulation tactic. And it, it causes that, what they call the Stockholm syndrome, where you are in favor of your abuser, right? So, and that's one of the main reasons why a lot of people who are in relationships with a narcissist, they don't leave, right? They stay because they've been trauma bonded. Ooh, right? So they've been trauma bonded. So I wanted to go to that article that was at Psych Central, and I'll leave a link below in the description box. So because of that nice, nasty, that intermittent reinforcement with some kindness and niceness, but then it's followed by, it could be gaslighting, it could be the silent treatment, it makes you continue that bond, that you bond with them. And then there's also chemicals that are released in us, in our bodies, where we bond to those people. And that's one of the reasons why with trauma bonding, a lot of times these narcissists will try to move into a relationship with you very early on by using sex, because during the encounter, or having that sexual encounter with that person, you start to release those hormones in your body that bonds you to that person. And that's one of the reasons why they like to try to jump in bed with you. It's like, guys, these people know exactly what they're doing. They go in, with a intent in mind, and it's usually not a good intention. But that was one of the reasons why the relationship moves so fast, and you end up in bed with these people. Unfortunately, it happens to a lot of people who are survivors, and they want to get you in bed because they want to bond you. So let's talk about the word bond. Let's talk about the word soul tie. So as a result of being bonded to this person, usually they develop this bond through sexual intimacy, and that kind of binds your body, your spirit, and your mind to this person, right? And then you end up staying in a relationship with somebody, even though they're negatively affecting you. And that's where the trauma bond comes in. So they misuse fear, excitement, sexual feelings. They use sexual psychology to reel you in and then discard you, but they use a reward and punishment type of thing, right? So that's what the trauma bond is. You're bonded to this person because this person is manipulating you by using reward and punishments, okay? Let's talk about the soul tie. Now, I know a lot of times people look at the soul tie as being spiritual. And when I went to look up soul tie, some of the synonyms and words that came up was tie, binding, being bound, an attachment, linkage, a spiritual component of a bond, even after the relationship is over. And like I said, one of the things that the soul tie can be good when you're in a good relationship with someone that really loves and cares for you, or the soul tie could be negative in the relationship with a narcissist, right? And how are some of the ways that you formulate a soul tie with somebody? Usually it's developed during sexual intimacy, and that involves the mind, body, and the spirit, right? So that soul tie and a trauma bond almost sound like the same thing. One is trauma bond. That's a psychology word. That's actual, it's known in the psychology realm. And then soul tie is a term, as far as spiritual, in the spiritual aspects, but they sound like the same thing, guys, right? So this is what I started understanding. I'm like, well, wait a minute. Wow. So even how many of us have gotten out of these relationships and still felt like we were bound to these individuals? It's because we had there were trauma bonds and soul ties in place. And I'm going to go to the New Living Translation, and these are, I am a believer, and for other people who might be believers and believe that these ties are spiritual in nature, let me read this part of this scripture. It's 1 Corinthians 6, verses 15 to 20. And a part of it read, we're talking about a person joining themselves with a prostitute. It says, don't you realize if a man joins himself to a prostitute, he becomes one with her? So, this particular scripture, and guys, if you're not a believer, just hang with me, okay? Even if you're not a believer, I'm going to wrap this up. Just keep an open mind. But it's basically saying if a man has intimacy with a prostitute, somebody they don't know, you become one with them. So for all of us who have been in relationships, just like this scripture points out, we have these intimate encounters with them. And when the oxytocin and some of those other chemicals that get released during a sexual encounter, those are the hormones that bind you to someone. So it almost brings credence to this particular scripture because it's showing you become one, right? And in order for you to actually break those soul ties and trauma bonds, you have to first and foremost not continue to be in any sexual relationship with them. Therefore, those chemicals won't be released that bind you to them. You go no contact, so that way their cycle of abuse with their trauma bond and their reward and punishment is no longer in play, right? And so therefore that tie, that bind, that attachment, that bounding, that linkage of the spiritual and physical is no longer there. So guys, this trauma bond and this soul tie sounds like it's almost one and the same, because I don't know about you, but people like to not think that there's some sort of spiritual attachment you have to this person. And going no contact, how many of you have tried to go no contact and it seemed like you're addicted? So it is a level of almost being addicted to that cycle of abuse. And that's why it's so difficult for individuals to leave even though they are being mistreated. Has anyone ever said to you, or you've ever heard in abusive relationships where they have said, why don't they just leave? It's because of the trauma bond. And for those people who believe in that spiritual aspect, that soul tie, it's like your soul is tied to that person. That's why it's so hard for victims of abuse, people who have been in narcissistic relationships. You were abused. So it's hard for you just to step outside of it because of the cycle of abuse and that intermittent reinforcement. These people are slick. They know exactly what they're doing to get you bound to them. And that's why it's important to not jump into, and I'm not being preachy, I'm just saying this from my own experience. I've made some of the same mistakes. Not to get involved with anyone sexually, financially, but especially sexually early on. Because once especially men can have, from what I understand, they can be intimate and not take it so personally. But especially us women, we get involved intimately with the man and then we feel like we're bound to them, right? So it's really important for us not to become sexually intimate with someone that we really don't know, trust, or you just met them on the first day. And that happens. Nobody of us is perfect, but one of the tactics of the narcissist and a lot of these toxic individuals is to try to get you entrapped and in a bind with them. So it's hard for you. It's like they capture you by just jumping in bed with you early on. So I know one of the other YouTubers on the platform, go to his YouTube channel, RC Blakes, Blakes Jr. He has a few good videos up there about soul ties. And it's very, very interesting, even for you, those of you who are not believers. Okay, so even if you're not a believer, do you believe that when you're intimate with these individuals, you release these chemicals and hormones that bound you to this person? And it's hard. It's some of the same hormones when you have a child, when a mother has a baby, you are bonding with your child. Those chemicals, oxytocin, are released. So these same chemicals, when you're having a relationship with these men, oxytocin gets released. My belief is the Most High, that's those chemicals should be released with the person that you're going to be married to or have a bond with, but somebody who truly cares, not a narcissist, right? So it's amazing how our bodies are made that when we do have this encounter with someone who is our spouse, that those chemicals are released to bond you to that person. And that's why it's hard to just walk away after you've had a sexual encounter. So yes, that scripture that I quoted was 1 Corinthians 6:15-20. And it's talking about a man joining himself with a prostitute. He becomes one with her. So that's why it's hard for us guys. We are tied. We get linked to these people spiritually. And we're like, well, dang, we can't, we know they're not treating us right, but why can't we just walk away? Even though this person is negatively affecting us, us in our important relationships. So guys, what do you think? Do you think the soul tie and the trauma bond, are they one and the same? Is the trauma bond just the clinical word for it, but soul tie is the word spiritually in the biblical, or if you're a believer? I believe they're one and the same. I believe one is in the spiritual aspect and the trauma bond is just the politically correct name for it. But you tied to this person, y'all know that we tied. You just can't get up and walk away all the time, for many of us. And that's why a lot of us stay in these relationships. Some stay for months and some, unfortunately, years and years and years with this trauma bond and soul tie. What do y'all think about this? Do y'all think it's a soul tie? Do you think it's a trauma bond? It's one and the same? Talk about it down below. Was it hard for you guys to leave? I'm sure I'll get different responses. And what did you think was the reason why it was difficult to leave and escape from some of these individuals? But guys, I'm here to say that trauma bond and that soul tie, these folks, they definitely want to try early on to get you wrapped up in them sheets, because that way that binds you to them. And anything that's bound, just think about it, guys. Something that's tied together, bound together, yoked together, linked together, it has to be pulled apart. It just doesn't come apart that easily. You got to unwoven it, unlink it, untie it, detach from it, be de-yoked or unyoked, if that's such a word. It takes some doing. So it doesn't happen that easy. And that's why getting in these relationships, you got to know what you're dealing with and take your time. Because once you get bound to these people, it's hard as heck. And then mind you, if you have children by them, it is difficult to get away and run away and escape. And that's why a lot of times they'll try to trap you, men and women. Some of these narcissistic women, they'll try to lay down in bed and get pregnant and right away, especially if they think they can get something. And some of these men will try to impregnate you. So guys, what do y'all think? Trauma bond, soul tie, one and the same? Don't know. Let's talk about it down below. But thank you guys so much for joining me for this episode. And guys, I always say this, you got one life to live. Own your life, guys, right? See you on the next episode. Like, subscribe, share of the Can We Talk with Monique. Peace.